Now, Mr. Grzegorz Zych.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gregory Zych, and I'm an assistant at the Department of Energy Transition here at our University of Economics in Katowice. I'm also honored to be a member of organizing committee of our wonderful conference. And so, first, before I start my presentation, I would like to thank all of you for coming here. Some of you, third time in a row. Some of you for the first time. Some of you through internet. But your appearance here is absolutely amazing to see that so many times we can meet and talk about such important matters. It's really, really heartwarming. So thank you very much. I'd also want to thank all the other people organizing this wonderful conference, Professor Czarnecka, Dr. Marcin Kraśniewski, but first and foremost, our beloved students. Well, we are just working here, but they're actually spending their free time to help us, which is the greatest sacrifice. So thank you guys so very much for all your hard work. You made it possible. But due to my talkativeness and a constant issue with time, I better start up my presentation. So today I would like to talk with you about the trust and transparency in green economy and how Poland addresses in this scenario the challenge of greenwashing. And so my presentation I will try to finish it, of course, will consist of few different models. But, okay. So, first of all, I would like to focus on the definition of the greenwashing. Oh, unfortunately, this doesn't work, so I will switch with you. I'm so sorry. Okay, much better. So, first of all, I would like to talk a little bit about the definition of greenwashing. I believe that everyone here knows a little bit about it, knows even more about it. But unfortunately, as it constantly turns out, greenwashing is extremely complicated. And unfortunately, the people who are practicing it are extremely creative. And so the definition and the practices change constantly. So I believe it's quite important to talk about the definitions. Later on, I would like to show a part of international perspective on greenwashing. I would like to talk a little bit about the cases, the newest cases, of course, and a little bit about the international legislation concerning greenwashing, and of course, the perspective of other countries and how they try to fight it. And lastly, I would like to talk about our Polish perspective, especially due to the fact that in the last few months, actually some quite important cases opened. Some very big companies in Poland were accused of greenwashing practices. We are all looking forward to see how exactly it will end up, but I believe it will liven up a little bit the discussion about the greenwashing, not only the scientific discussion, but first and foremost the legal and practical discussion. And at the end, I'd like to show you some of my conclusions concerning this topic, if I will have enough time for that. So let us start with the definitions. I picked up some definitions, of course, mind that those are just 4 examples. As I already stated, unfortunately, greenwashing is constantly changing. And so the definitions are also very different. Some of them, they address the behavior or an activity, like this definition created for the purposes of Cambridge Dictionary and Thesaurus. Some of the definitions, they are trying to address more some environmental practices or communication issues. But first and foremost, and please look at the first part of this definition, they address the consumers themselves. And so on. It changes, so on. It evolves all the time. Those are just some examples. But I think that the one thing which is showing exactly why we have so many definitions is the many faces or many sins of greenwashing. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about them. So one of the environmental organizations, the TerraChoice Environmental Marketing, they created lists of sins. The sins which are usually just the types of greenwashing created or used around the world, such as the sin of no proof, which are claims that have no scientific or technical proof behind them, that they're just stating that something might be be eco-friendly or environmentally friendly without any proper support. We have a sin of hidden trade-off, which usually is suggesting that the product complies with some environmental protection principles while highlighting only just a little part of it and completely disregarding the rest of the product, the rest of the service. The sin of vagueness, probably one of the most popular ones, in which there are several eco-friendly claims which are so vague that no one really understands what they state, but they might unfortunately affect consumers, and not only them. There are several more sins, but as you can see, since we have so many forms of greenwashing, so many forms of greenwashing activities, the definitions, they have to evolve as well. But unfortunately, the one quite sad, I would say, issue is that even though we have so many definitions, dictionary ones, scholar ones, even there are definitions created just for the media purposes, we don't have one single definition of a legal caliber, so to speak. And actually, it's something what Professor Heffron said at the beginning of our conference, that we are letting people who are not lawyers defining a extremely important matter. And unfortunately, the legal brains, they are trying. I'm not saying they're not, but I would say that, especially from the Polish perspective, so far at least, there is much work to be done by us lawyers. Now, going back to the coming forward to our international perspective. So first, it's I think at every presentation, every discussion about greenwashing, the best part of those presentations are some examples. So let me just start with them. So one of the most fresh ones I could find lately was the case of Keurig and Lavazza in Canada, in which the Keurig unfortunately misled the public by stating that their single-use coffee pods can be extremely easy to recycle, that there almost 90% of those little plastic cups can be recycled. Turns out, unfortunately, that for whole Canada, which is a rather big country, there were only three provinces that actually could recycle those cups. And it wasn't so easy as well, because there was a whole procedure that a possible consumer had to first attend to in order to recycle something. And so the Canadian legislator, or the Canadian Regulatory Office of Competition and Consumers, fined Keurig by, I believe it was about 3 million penalty for such practice. The other example is Shein in 2025. I believe that everyone knows Shein, and it's actually quite interesting that they are even trying to claim that something is environmental. But Shein represented one of the scene of vagueness by creating a lot of hashtags, creating ad campaigns which were trying to prove that Shein was actually eco-friendly or green. Unfortunately for Shein, the Italian Office of Consumer Protection and Competition found out that those claims, of course, were completely false, and so also showed that the Shein is not properly enforcing legislation which is aiming to reduce carbon footprint. And the last example, which is, I believe, closest to my heart because it comes from the energy sector, is Shell in 2023. Shell, what they did in England is that they claimed that they have a massive green overhaul, that they are trying to focus on renewable energy. And so they launched a massive campaign on YouTube, billboards, TV ads, on which they stated that they are in southwest of UK delivering energy, which is 100% renewable from renewable sources, to 78,000 homes. But they forgot to add, or they added it, this information, but in a very, very small font, that this energy was actually coming not from Shell, but from the energy companies in England, from the energy grid, not from Shell itself. And so after several organizations filed, well, unfortunately not a lawsuit, but they filed a complaint to a regulatory office of the UK, Shell was not fined, but the ad campaign was completely banned. And so what are the regulations, or actually the types of regulations that are used internationally? Because we don't have time, unfortunately, to talk about all the different types of regulations that legislators use to fight greenwashing. So I believe I would like to show you two specific types. So first, let's start with Competition Act in Canada. This example is quite interesting because the Competition Act, as you can probably hear, it's quite a general legal act. It addresses not only greenwashing, but the Canadian legislator thought that the greenwashing issue and the misleading in terms of environmental issues, misleading consumers, but not only consumers, is such a serious threat that they added a specific principles and articles to this Competition Act, which are addressing greenwashing directly. So we have principles stating, for example, that the environmental claims should be truthful, not false or misleading, or that the comparative environmental claims should be specific about what is being compared. So the greenwashing, of course, the types of greenwashing are perfectly and directly addressed. In the EU, the European legislator found out through their own resources that the consumers in the EU not only value the environmental claims, but they are actually willing to spend more money if something can be eco-friendly, and so on. The greenwashing, of course, became a serious issue in the EU. So our legislator, our European legislator, created a document called Greenwashing Directive. Of course, the regular name is a little bit longer because it's just a directive of European Parliament and Council, amending several directives as regards to empowering consumers for the green transition through better protection against their practices and better information. It's a bit of a mouthful. I think that the Greenwashing Directive is a little bit better. And so the Greenwashing Directive is also doing a quite similar thing to a Competition Act in Canada, which is legally directly addressing issues of greenwashing. Now, of course, the countries of the EU, they have a right to choose on how they will implement the Greenwashing Directive. Unfortunately, Poland is a little bit, well, we are not technically behind, but we still do not have any legislation which would address this directive. So it's up to our legislator to choose whether we will go into the Competition Act Canada way, which is implementing greenwashing issues to our existing legal frames, or to create a completely different legal act which will do it, which will address it more precisely. Now, how is it in the Polish perspective? So we do have regulations. We do have tools in order to fight with greenwashing. We have an act on counterfeiting, unfair market practices, on combating unfair competition, and of course, the act on competition and consumer protection. There are several issues though. First of all, those acts, they are not addressing greenwashing. They are addressing unfair market practices, but unfortunately, the regulator or a trader or just a natural person, they have to prove first that certain greenwashing activity is a unfair market practice by the definition of this legal act, which makes it a little bit more hard in order to prove that some companies actually practicing greenwashing. The second thing, which is a little problem, is that the first two acts you see, so unfair competition and unfair market practices, in those bills, the weight of actually filing a lawsuit will always be on the consumer or on the company which was treated with the greenwashing practice. Which means that unfortunately, to find justice in this greenwashing practices, some person will have to sacrifice a lot of money, a lot of time, with not such a sure result. The exemption from this is the Act on Competition and Consumer Protection. This act grants our regulatory office a power to create or to investigate a matter only when consumers will file a specific motion for that. But the problem is that in order for our regulatory office to work like that, something which have to happen is that a specific practice is actually infringing a general rights of consumers, which will not indicate which will not address the individual issues, but the general interests. And so it can be a little bit problematic. And that's exactly what happened in the 4 cases that actually happened in Poland last few months. So the regulatory office launched a proceedings around the DHL, DPD, Allegro, and InPost. 3 of them are logistic companies. One of them is a, well, kind of like a Polish Amazon, I would say. All those companies, they tried to create certain claims, which, for example, said that their car fleet is completely net zero, that they have no emissions whatsoever, or they tried to manipulate a little bit the consumers, showing them that using those services will make a better situation on our Earth throughout the environmental claims. Now, what happened, of course, is that our regulatory office found those words a little bit misleading, and in the end infringing the collective interests of consumers. And that's why we have those proceedings. But that's the issue, that if you personally or your company as itself will be the victim of greenwashing, then unfortunately the whole weight of the proceedings will be on your shoulders. Now, what are the conclusions here? Well, first of all, we need a direct legal reference to the practice of greenwashing. Currently, we have some general practices that might be greenwashing, but it's up to us to prove that they are a greenwashing. However, in the European Union or Canada, those practices are defined, which makes it a little bit easier to find some justice. The other thing is the harmonization of protection. Currently, we have a difference in protection when you are a consumer, when you are a natural person, for example, who runs their own business, or when you are a company. Unfortunately, not everyone is protected the same way, but the differences currently are a little bit too big. So I would say it's absolutely necessary to harmonize the mechanisms of protection. And the third conclusion, unfortunately, this is the same thing. Sorry for that. The third conclusion is, of course, that we have to address those changes as fast as we can. So actions like those created by the UOKIK, our regulatory office, may happen a little bit faster, and the greenwashing might be eradicated in the future. Thank you so very much, and thank you for additional.
Thank you very much. Thank you for a very interesting presentation, excellent slides.